In this supplemental lecture video, I'm going to do an example to show you how to construct the production possibilities curves, calculate opportunity cost, find comparative advantage, and show how specialization leads to gains from trade. I recommend you download the slides to go with the example and work along with me. Let's suppose we have two countries, Japan and South Korea. It takes 100 hours to produce a digital camera in Japan and 5 hours to produce 1 bushel of wheat. In South Korea, it takes 90 hours to produce a digital camera and 3 hours to produce 1 bushel of wheat. Let's suppose each country has a total of 9,000 labor hours to devote to the production of the two goods. Let's draw in the production possibilities frontier for each country. Let's start with Japan. If Japan devotes all of its resources, all 9,000 hours, to the production of digital cameras, it can produce a total of 90 digital cameras. If it chooses to spend all of its 9,000 labor hours in the production of wheat, it can produce 1,800 bushels of wheat. Let's show this. In South Korea, the South Koreans could spend all of their labor hours in the production of digital cameras and produce 100 digital cameras, or spend all of their labor hours in the production of wheat and produce a total of 3,000 bushels. We'll also assume that South Korea could choose to produce any combination in between. Now let's suppose both countries decide to allocate 3,600 hours to the production of digital cameras and 5,400 labor hours to wheat production. In Japan, this means the Japanese choose to produce 36 digital cameras and 1,080 bushels of wheat. In South Korea, the South Koreans produce 40 digital cameras and 1,800 bushels of wheat. Now let's calculate opportunity cost. What is Japan's opportunity cost of producing 1 digital camera? To produce 1 camera, Japan must spend 100 hours. In the next best use of those 100 hours is the production of wheat. 100 hours could produce 20 bushels of wheat. In Japan, 1 digital camera costs 20 bushels of wheat. In South Korea, 1 digital camera costs 90 hours. Those 90 hours could be used to produce 30 bushels of wheat. In South Korea, 1 digital camera costs 30 bushels of wheat. Now let's calculate the opportunity cost of wheat production. In Japan, it takes 5 hours to produce 1 bushel of wheat. Those 5 hours could be used towards the production of 1/20th of a digital camera. In Japan, 1 bushel of wheat costs 1/20th of a digital camera. In South Korea, 1 bushel of wheat takes 3 hours. Those 3 hours could be used to produce 1/30th of a digital camera. In South Korea, the opportunity cost of 1 bushel of wheat is 1/30th of a camera. Let's fill in this table. Which country has the comparative advantage in the production of digital cameras? Well, in Japan, 1 digital camera costs 20 bushels of wheat, and in South Korea, 1 digital camera costs 30 bushels of wheat. Japan can produce digital cameras at a lower opportunity cost, so Japan has the comparative advantage in the production of digital cameras. Now let's look at wheat. In Japan, 1 bushel of wheat costs 1/20th of a digital camera. So when Japan produces 1 bushel of wheat, it must forego 1/20th of a digital camera. Compare that to South Korea, where every time the South Koreans produce a bushel of wheat, they forego 1/30th of a digital camera. Since the opportunity cost of producing a bushel of wheat is lower, In South Korea, 1/30th is less than 1/20th. South Korea has the comparative advantage in the production of wheat. Now let's suppose Japan and South Korea decide to specialize in trade. So they specialize completely in the good, they have a comparative advantage. Since Japan has the comparative advantage in digital cameras, Japan should use all of its resources to produce digital cameras, and as we showed before, Japan can produce 90 digital cameras. South Korea has the comparative advantage in wheat, so South Korea should spend all of its 9,000 labor hours in the production of wheat and produce 3,000 bushels of wheat and no digital cameras. Now, Japan and South Korea have agreed to trade, and in exchange for 1,100 bushels of wheat, the exporter of wheat will receive 48 digital cameras. So Japan is the producer of digital cameras. So Japan trades 48 digital cameras, leaving them 42 digital cameras left, in exchange for 1,100 bushels of wheat. Japan consumes 42 digital cameras and 1,100 wheat. South Korea receives 48 digital cameras in exchange for 1,100 bushels of wheat. Since South Korea produces 3,000 bushels of wheat, that leaves South Korea 1,900. So South Korea consumes 48 digital cameras and 1,900 bushels of wheat. This is more for both Japan and South Korea than they were able to consume before. So much like technology, trade allows countries to consume at points beyond their production possibilities curves. And we know, since consumers prefer more to less, that consumers in both Japan and South Korea are made better off by specialization in trade. In this video, we learned how to construct production possibilities curves, we calculated opportunity costs, we found the country's comparative advantage, and we showed that specialization leads to gains from trade.